And on PM Express tonight, the raging debate on emoluments for Article 71 holders. There's been mixed reactions since the recommendations of the Ntiamwa Bedu Committee report was approved by Parliament and subsequently assented by the President. Now, Member of Parliament for North Tong, who is also the ranking member for the Foreign Affairs Committee, has been making suggestions, for instance, for MPs to procure vehicles through private loan arrangements instead of burdening government, plus a complete overhaul of emoluments for Article 71 office holders. The question then is it feasible? Is it likely to happen? So tonight, emoluments for Article 71 office holders, and we're asking the question, is it time for an overhaul? We'll be finding out why we are putting across this question. But as you may know, the conversation was started by Okujeto Ablakwa, who is MP for North Tong. What has he been saying? He's been calling on other MPs to advocate for the discontinuation of the purchase of vehicles for MPs through government loans. Why? According to him, MPs who need car loans should be allowed to procure their own vehicles through private loan arrangements. Why is he making all of this? And there are many who say he's been enjoying this for some time now. Why now? Now, he says, as MPs, let's also boldly confront and discontinue the practice of government loans to purchase vehicles for MPs. And that's according to him. His colleague, Nelson Dafiamakbo, he says some MPs go to Parliament in Uber rides, which is worrying and unsafe. And so he thinks that it's justified for government to purchase vehicles for MPs. Now, he insists that MPs deserve better than even the $28 million car loan that people are complaining about. He says MPs deserve more than that. And he continues to say MPs should rather be given official cars like members of the executive and legislature. This conversation has also been raging that they need a pool of vehicles to be fueled by government, so MPs can use as and when they desire, as and when it's necessary, and then they can leave it when they are leaving office. We will be assessing all of that, but let's look at the amount of money that is creating this confusion. $28 million, that's the loan that will be distributed for 275 members of Parliament to purchase 275 vehicles. Now, government is further asking for additional $3.5 million loan agreement to purchase vehicles for the 31-member Council of State. They're also part of the Article 71 office holders. Now, while the $28 million facility has to be paid within a 45-month period, the $3.5 million loan facility is to be paid within 42 months. This has generated some controversy. According to the press release by the Public Affairs Directorate of Parliament, the loan is not free and won't be paid from the pockets of citizens. So how is it going to be paid? The loan offer is part of MP's conditions of service, which is payable during their tenure. That's the explanation we are getting. Are there further explanations to this? There are terms and conditions, and this is how it's going to be. Government will pay 60% of the accrued interest for MPs, and MPs will pay 40% of the whole amount, the loan that is going to be given to Parliament, and the interest that will generate. In real terms, government will give beneficiaries $27.5 million. The beneficiaries will then pay government $11 million over 45 months. The difference of $16.5 million plus the interest of $4.6 million will be paid by government. So that's the breakdown. This means that each MP and each of the 31-member Council of State members is expected to receive about $100,000 for the purchase of a vehicle. And the question is it time for an overhaul? Because this has been raging for some time now, since this whole committee released its recommendation, its report, and Parliament approved, and subsequent approval by President. It's been raging for a while, and we're asking the question, emoluments for Article 71 office holders time for an overhaul. And tonight, I'm happy to be joined by the Nocton MP, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who is also ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, to actually break down the proposal he's making. I'll also be joined by Dr. Rashid Rahman, who is Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and Professor Ransford Jampo, who is an Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Ghana. We'll get, the show running shortly when all of them join us after this break. Do stay tuned in. To the show, Ms. Ablakwa, thanks so much for joining us in the studio. Dr. Draman and Professor Jampo, you're also joining us virtually. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me start with you, Ms. Okudzeto-Ablakwa. I want you to explain to me your proposal to government. First of all, for parliamentarians to start accessing their loans from private entities.
Well, thank you very much, Aisha. Good evening to you and to colleagues on Zoom and our esteemed viewers. So my proposal, first of all, is to carry out a fundamental overhaul of the entire Article 71 arrangement as we have now, because all the other matters emanate from the whole Article 71 architecture, which we are currently implementing, and which we have been implementing for some time, because it is an entrenched provision of the Constitution. There's a need to decisively amend the Constitution and create a more equitable and fair arrangement. Why do I say that? Consistently, every 4 years, we come to this point where you can tell that there is considerable public anger. The citizens who we represent as leaders are not the least enthused about this arrangement. They contend that it has created disparities and that a certain apartheid regime has been established where a particular group, a special category of public servants, treat themselves specially, different from other public sector workers. So to address this perennial agitations, which, as I indicated in my write-up, is undermining confidence in our democracy. And you see, as politicians, as public officers, we must be concerned. If the people you lead feel strongly about a particular matter and there is grave revulsion about that matter, don't pretend that you are not aware. Don't ignore the agitations. And it is important that if you don't want a disconnect, if you don't want the perception which is building up, that you see, as for that category of people, is all about themselves, it is all about how to milk the system dry, and they do not care about the rest. What will then happen is that one of these days, if care is not taken, this democracy that we are all working hard to consolidate, there will be an explosion. So I am proposing that we should have an independent Emoluments Commission. And interestingly, I came with the Constitutional Review Commission, the work that Professor Mills commissioned, and the report which they issued on Tuesday, 20th December 2011. They make the same proposal. When the Constitutional Review Commission toured the country, the overwhelming feedback they received from Ghanaians is that they do not endorse the Article 71 arrangement as it stands now, and that they feel discriminated against. And you see, what is even more worrying is that The Article 71 system, as has been rolled out, creates a sense of scratch my back, I scratch your back, where there is a category of public officers that the president approves when the committee is set up. And there have been committees since the Miranda Green Street Committee, then you had the Chinwe-Hesse Committee, then after Chinwe-Hesse Committee, you had there was the Ishmael Yamson Committee to review, because there was, again, massive agitation about President Kufuor's end of service benefit and that era. So you had the Ishmael Yamson Committee to carry out some review and try to reduce the recommendations. Then we had the Professor Dubuando. Now we have the Professor Ntiamwa Bedu Committee. Now, all of these committee reports, it goes to Parliament, then it also goes to the President. So you have a category, Parliament, you have the speakers, deputy speakers, Chief Justice, Auditor General, Chairman of the Electoral Commission, the justices of the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, the District Assembly's Common Fund Administrator, and their vice. Then you have the National Council for Higher Education, however, so-called Public Services Commission, the National Media Commission, the Lands Commission, and then the National Commission for Civic Education. So this category, the president approves their portion. Then Parliament approves the portion for the executive. Now, this gives you a certain semblance of an insider trading of a sort. The Constitution Review Commission even uses a stronger word, incestuous. They call it an incestuous arrangement. And you see, perception is very important in politics, where you have a situation where the overwhelming majority of the populace hold a certain view, there's a certain resentment. Leadership must offer a response. And you see, already, particularly the political class, we are not very much liked. And we should not do things that, you know, will accentuate that and create a certain impression that we just don't care and we are in this just for ourselves. I believe that there are a good number of colleagues in public service who want to leave a good legacy, who want to have a good name. And so if you have an arrangement like this, which is so incestuous, which is so insider dealing of a sort, and you can overhaul it and bring reforms, why not? Let's take the United Kingdom as an example. You recall the 2009 MPs expense scandal, where MPs in the House of Commons had claimed all kinds of monies they were not entitled to. It leaked to the Telegraph and other newspapers. They serialized it, and it led to such a massive uproar that MPs in the United Kingdom were misusing taxpayers' money. It led to major reforms. Initially, I mean, pre-2010, at the House of Commons, the Fees Office, together with the leadership of the House, determined the conditions of service for MPs in the House of Commons. But after that scandal, responding to the public anger, the whole uproar that was greeted by that scandal, they set up an independent body known as the IPSA, the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, the IPSA, to remove the politicians from the process. Initially, they had something similar to what we have, where Parliament is approving for the executive is approving for Parliament, and there's no public confidence in the process. It lent itself to abuse. So this time, they said that, look, the politicians will stay away, and everybody welcomed it. So now you have the IPSA that is determining the conditions of service of politicians in the United Kingdom.
So that's the kind of thing you want to be done in Ghana.
That is what I think we should move towards.
Okay.
So that it's an independent body. It's not about, because you see, the current arrangement, if you are expecting the executive to approve yours, then you better make his good.
Because
so that
yours will come.
So that, yes, you know, and then you have the president also approving that of the judiciary. And one wonders, should the president even be getting involved in conditions of service for the judiciary, where there should be separation of powers and all of that? So it's simply not a tidy arrangement. It does not build public confidence.
There are those who would say that, I mean, you've been a beneficiary of this for a long time. I mean, this is your third term in Parliament, right?
Yes, my third
Why
term.
has it become necessary now for you to call for an overhaul? But let me bring in Dr. Draman first, before I bring you in on this one. Dr. Draman, Mr. Okujeto-Ablakwa is calling for this, I mean, on the car loan, for instance, he wants MPs to go get their car loans from a private entity. I've not heard any single member of Parliament who is supporting this one, but where do you stand on this one?
Well, Aisha, thank you very much for having me, and a good evening to honorable member. Now, I think where I stand on this, and I have been very consistent, you know, since I think the third or the fourth Parliament, I have said, I mean, all the time, that if our democracy is indeed standing on three legs, then I think over the years, we've been very unfair to our members of Parliament. Because when you take, you know, the three functions of members of Parliament, you know, one of the ones that faces a lot of challenges is the one on representation. It is not clear how MPs are supposed to go back to their constituencies. It is not clear who picks up that bill, and so on and so forth. And then in addition to that, we say they should take a loan and buy a car and go and do constituency work and represent us. I think I have been against that right from day one. Now, if we look at the current uproar and the calls for overhaul, I think the call from the honorable member is in the right direction. But for me, you know, Aisha, I've been asking myself a lot of questions. You know, when this issue came up in the last week or so, initially, we heard that it's going to be a similar arrangement like before, where members of Parliament are given a loan to buy their own cars, and not subsequently we heard that there was some percentage that was going to be footed by the state. I don't know, maybe the honorable member can confirm that.
Okay.
But for me, when I saw the reaction of the public, I asked myself the question, how did we get to this point where we dislike our representatives so much so that even when they are going to take a loan that they are going to pay for, we are crying foul and we are saying no to it. So I kept asking myself, how did we get to this point? You know, to the extent that if somebody is going to take a loan that he is going to pay out of their own resources, I mean, what is our business in saying that they should not take that loan? You know, and I think, I mean, as I asked the question over and over, I realized that, you know, the Parliament as an institution has dug a very deep hole for itself over the years. The extent that, you know, we've gotten to a point where, you know, we that are represented do not trust and do not, you know, do not like, I mean, the honorable member himself used the word that, I mean, the politicians, our leaders are not being liked. And I think it is more in the case of members of Parliament than it is in the case of other branches of government. And you see, when we engage citizens, we engage in conversations about Parliament, about conditions of service of members of Parliament. I get asked always a question, Look at the house. Whenever the TV cameras go into the house, we see an empty house. So why are you saying that we should be paying all these and giving all these benefits when we are not getting, the returns for these benefits? So I think number one, Parliament has a lot of work to do in terms of improving its image, in terms of endearing itself, to us, the citizens that are being represented. And number two, Aisha, I think, over the years, we are yet to see instances when Parliament has come together as an institution to really hold the executive to account. For instance, the honorable member sitting in the studio has a question that has been filed to get answers on our president's recent travels. Mm-hmm. I think the last I checked, up to this point, we still don't have the answers. It doesn't look like the two sides are united in terms of trying to get answers to questions such as this, which would show that Parliament is really working, Parliament is really up and doing, and is holding the executive to account. In 2007, when we started opening up the Public Accounts Committee to the public, I think at that time the honorable member was not in Parliament. The committee was then led by Honorable Salas Mensah. I remember the very first day when the committee started its hearing. The kind of plaudits that Parliament as an institution received at the time was so much so that citizens now said, wow, now we are seeing a Parliament that can really bite and a Parliament that is up and doing. The trend hasn't continued. Well, it wasn't even a trend. I think it was just a one-off thing, because over the years, questions have been raised about, okay, now in the public hearings, the naming and shaming, then what? So all these to say, I think if Parliament is able to do two things, work on its image, be up and doing, and ensure that we hold the executive to account, then I think Parliament would endear itself to citizens to the extent that we are not going to see the kind of reaction that we have seen this time around, but we have seen every 4 years when this issue of car loans for MPs comes up.
Professor Jampo, who is an associate associate professor of political science at the University of Ghana. Prof, what do you make of the controversy that has characterized the car loan approval in Parliament as recommended by the Bedu Ntiamwa Committee's report?
Good evening. What did you say? Please repeat your question.
I'm asking your take on the controversy that has characterized the approval of the recommendation made by the Ntiamwa Committee's report.
Specifically in respect to which one? Is it the one that is asking?
We are now talking about the car loans, for instance.
Oh, please. I think that the politician of today and occupants of positions in the two main arms of government, if you look at the mood of Ghanaians, I would say they have lost the legitimacy in making such demands and in going about those approvals. Nobody will support that idea that after every 4 years you want to think about approving loans for some politicians to buy cars for themselves. If there is an arrangement that allows the state to serve as a guarantor in securing loans for politicians who operate within the House of Parliament, I think that arrangement should rather be channeled to our health infrastructure. Let that arrangement be done, at the various hospitals. Go to Kolebu, you see people who are on dialysis machine queuing, and the machines are not there. If the state wants to reorder its priorities to ensure that such engagements or such facilities are given to areas that are really in need, that would be better for us. I think that the politician of today hasn't endeared itself or herself to the people of Ghana. And so it's a disappointing situation.
Okay, so
I mean,
do you agree with the proposal that they should now seek their vehicle loans from private sectors and not burden government?
Where is that proposal coming from?
It's an honorable member who is making that proposal.
Well, the idea is the burden for them to acquire vehicles should be on themselves. It no longer should be something that the nation will guarantee, because first of all, I'm not even sure that all of them would end up paying. And if they would pay, then if it's a loan and they will pay, then let them go and look for the loan like any ordinary Ghanaian would go seek, for a loan.
In this situation, government is paying 60% for the MPs on the interest accrued.
60% of the loan that they acquire.
The interest accrued.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, the politician of today has lost legitimacy in making such demands or in benefiting from such interventions from the states and from the taxpayers' resources. And I am foreseeing a situation where some of us would make the clarion call on public servants whose salaries amount to pittance to think about how they can take on the politician of today, so that there will be a certain revolution to bring a classless society, so that we can have some egalitarianism within the body politic. We can't always have a situation where certain people, certain cohorts of the citizenry are always made to benefit from certain interventions from the state, whereas others are always asked to wait, always asked to, please, I get emotional and very passionate about these things, but this evening I don't want to get there. The point is that it doesn't make sense for us to be thinking about buying new government guaranteeing loans for MPs almost every 4 years, and then also going out of its way. I think this information that government is going to pay 50% of the loan is not out there in the public domain. I don't think it's too much out there in the public domain. What we know is that government, they told us that government is only guaranteeing. But if it's out there in the public domain, then I think it's ridiculous.
Okay, so Mr. Ogujoto-Ablakwa, and the question is, you've been enjoying this for a period of time now. Why then now? Why now? Why not from the onset? Why do you feel it's now important to just divert from this practice?
Well, if you have followed my writings and my submissions on these matters, I've been very consistent. Indeed, if you go through the parliamentary Hansard, it's not the first time I'm making this call. A lot of my colleagues know where I stand on these matters.
Okay.
Within my party, anytime we have worked on the governance architecture of our manifesto, what should be the format we should follow, and proposals we should make moving forward to deepen good governance practices in our country. I have always suggested that we need to carry out a review of some of these matters. So it's not new. You recall that last year, for example, when the finance minister came to Parliament and served notice that he will be coming back to deplete the Heritage Fund to fight COVID, I put out 10 proposals in my objection to that proposal that the finance minister made. And one of them was that we can review the Article 71 arrangement and we'll make a lot of savings in that department. So I've not been one to be shy of or to be scared of probably cutting enmity, or, if you like, stirring the hornet's nest within the parliamentary institution. But you see, you have to place my proposal on the car loan matter in proper context.
Okay.
What I am saying is that we should have uniformity. You cannot have a situation where the state provides duty vehicles for ministers, DCs, presidential staffers, judges, chief directors, the persons working in the security services.
Okay.
You name them. This list is not exhaustive by any means. But when it comes to Parliament, then we cannot have that uniformity.
Okay.
What is wrong if we have uniformity, where if it's a pool of vehicles we are making available so that MPs can also sign up for it when they are visiting their constituency and all of that. If at the end of the term you leave it behind for a successor, or if you are returning, you can continue to use that. Okay. I've been a deputy minister before. When it gets to a time where the state wants to probably change the vehicles because they have become old and probably beginning to break down and all of that, you may want to have the first right after an evaluation, and you pay for it. So there's a well-established system of providing vehicles in a pool, duty vehicles for public officers. But when it comes to Parliament, there's a whole different arrangement.
Okay.
And MPs have their salaries deducted from every month. And Aisha, I can confirm to you that from January, these deductions have been taking place. Now we are told that these deductions will only amount to 40%. And then a loan of $28 million is required to cover the remaining 60%. I am saying that this arrangement appears to burden the taxpayer. It is not an arrangement in uniformity, and we seem to be discriminating against the legislative arm. So if it is about a loan for Parliament guaranteed by the finance minister, why don't we rather have an arrangement? Because ideally, what we should have is uniformity, where just as we're able to provide vehicles for DCs, ministers, the deputy ministers, the presidential staffers, the aides, the judges, and all the CEOs of the various SOEs and other state institutions, the constitutional bodies, SHRAJ, NCC, the Controller and Accountant General, Audit Service, name them. If we cannot follow that uniformity for Parliament as well, then free members of Parliament's salaries, stop the deductions, and allow members of Parliament to be able to go into their own private arrangements with their bankers, so that just as our colleagues in the private sector are able to secure car loans, and it serves them well, based on your preference, the terrain of your constituency and all of that, you can also then secure your own car loan with your bankers, a private arrangement. So that is the proposal I'm making. And I think that, you see, it is important that we do not lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, we must consider what will be of less impact on the taxpayer. The principles that we should espouse are that how we take care of public servants, we should adapt a system that does not create disparities, first of all. You don't discriminate against other public sectors in a way that it is just totally unconscionable. You work towards a fair and just system. And then you also consider options. There are always policy options. You choose the option that, if you do the cost-benefit analysis, and if you look at the fiscal impact on the economy, it is not burdensome, so that you can, in the final analysis, have resources reserved for your development projects to carry out the investments in the health sector, in the road sector, in education, and agriculture, other key sectors that would drive growth and will create opportunities for our people. So, to me, Those are the principles that should underpin, these discussions. And it should all start from good faith. It should start from best practice. That is why I come back to having an independent body that should determine these things. Because as it is now, the impression is created that, look, there's a cabal. This whole political class, the Article 71 office holders, is all about themselves. And they meet secretly and decide just how much, they can cream off the system. I have spoken to some members of the Constituent Assembly and all of that. When they were putting these arrangements together, they were looking at having an end-of-service benefit that will allow our presidents, whoever they may be, to willfully and happily hand over when they lose an election or they complete a term. So we don't have a situation where presidents and their cronies want to stay on to derail our democratic experiment, as we have seen elsewhere, particularly on this continent. We are seeing even the third term scenario coming back, where a lot of countries, including our neighbors, Ivory Coast recently, are amending their constitution so that they can run for third terms. We have not had that because these are presidents who are retiring on their salary and all of that. But I think that having implemented this for a while, and after some 28 years, we have stabilized, and our democracy is here to stay. And if care is not taken, when you leave arrangements like this in place, despite the public uproar, despite the agitations, and how if you read the TUC statement, for example, very strongly worded statement, where they are even asking refunds when it comes to the spousal, the spousal proposals that were made by the Ntiamoa Bedu report. Which clearly is unconstitutional. We should never have gotten there in the first place. It is totally wrong. First ladies and second ladies should be paid. We've not given them any jobs to do, and we should never have seen that proposal even come to the fore. So let's go back to how this whole thing has been set up. Let's remove the role we play, parliament, executive, and all of that, and it's incestuous. Scratch my back, I scratch your back. It's like some insider trading of a sort. Let's remove that. Let's have an independent body. Or another option is to amend Act 737, the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, and give them further mandate to be the body that, if we are averse to, if you like, creating another body, because people complain about the cost of maintaining such bodies when you create them. I do not think that if you compare with the committees that we set up every 4 years, from the Miranda Greenstreet era up to this time, if you look at how much we have been paying them and all of it, it will amount to the same thing or less. So either you do that, have an independent body, which I would strongly recommend to take care of Article 71, because it's an entrenched provision, or you want to amend the Fair Wages and Salaries, Commission Act to give them mandate. In that case, you remove all of these persons under Article 71. They are not involved at all. Because really,
but the question also is, you refer to the Constitution Review Commission, and there's a question about, did your government accept the recommendations? Because the white paper issued by your government rejected a number of that.
Rejected quite a number of proposals made. I recall even about, and there were some slight amendments to some of them when you look at even, for example, election of MMDCs and all of that. I would need to check on this specific one, what the government had to say about that. But it is important to emphasize that we have an opportunity now to take advantage of this groundswell and the whole debate which is going on now, to carry out reforms. That is how functioning democracies everywhere in the world.
And Parliament must seize that opportunity.
Exactly. We have to seize the opportunity. I've been citing the UK example.
Exactly.
They seized the opportunity in 2010. They now have an independent body, you know, the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, which is determining conditions of service for members of Parliament.
And surely you think that's the way we should go?
Absolutely.
Now, Professor Jampo, the Ntiamoa Bedu report expresses concern. Ordinary public sector workers, as at 2016, were earning 6% of the average salary of Article 71 office holders. What does that do to the morale of the public service? Is Professor Jampo there? Okay, so if he's not there, let me go to Dr. Rahman. Dr. Draman, okay, let me go to Dr. Draman if you're there. Dr. Rashid Draman, what is the practice elsewhere? I mean, the standard practice across the world with regards to, I mean, article or senior government officials?
Well, Aisha, the practice around the world is one that does not give a one-size-fits-all. I think each country tries to determine, you know, based on the size of its cloth, it cuts its coat. If you go to the frugal Scandinavian countries, for instance, you know, members of parliament, ministers of state, you know, they travel on public transport, they live in public housing, and so on and so forth. If you go to Australia, for instance, you know, members of parliament and ministers are provided, you know, state-of-the-art kind of vehicles, and they have all kinds of conditions of service, and so on and so forth. I mean, you look at these two countries, these are both rich countries, but maybe Sweden takes a different approach to the approach taken by Australia or by Canada, or indeed by the UK that the honourable member has cited. I mean, we are a developing country. I don't think that we have resources anywhere near some of these countries that I have mentioned. Indeed, we even go to them cap in hand sometimes to ask for resources. So there has to be a conversation. And for me, I think the focus of whatever I would say at all times is the equality that the honourable member has mentioned. I think there has to be, if all our members of, the Article 71 holders, if all of them are going to be given a saloon car, it must be a saloon car across board. If all of them are going to have maybe a certain condition, it must be across board. Of course, with some variations, because, I mean, there are ministers, there are deputy ministers, there's president, there's vice president, and so on and so forth. And then I think most importantly, these must also be people that have a job description, people that we are hiring as Ghanaians to do work for us. Because I know, I mean, the honorable member has raised the issue about other Article 71 public office holders, like what we are hearing now about the wives of
presidents and the
vice presidents. I mean, for me, it is okay if we are going to pay them, but we should have a job description for them so that at least we know that this is what we are hiring them for. There has to be some way of making sure that legally, I think this can be supported. Otherwise, we are going to continue to have this conversation, and there's going to be a lot of revulsion. And if we are not careful, you see, the reason why, as I indicated, in all this brouhaha, you know, members of parliament are taking more flack than other branches of our constitutional arrangement. It's mainly because people are saying, for instance, you know, this issue that we are discussing about the spouses of the president and the vice president. I mean, they say the issue was discussed in the 7th Parliament, and members of Parliament, including the honourable member sitting in your studio, was in that house. So people are saying, you know, where were our members of Parliament when this was being discussed and passed, or how did it, I mean, come to this?
Okay.
So these are some of the issues, and that's why I was saying earlier that, look, I mean, we don't have to get to a point where we dislike our representatives to the extent that even when they are taking a loan that they are going to pay, we get up in arms and say, no, we disagree.
I think the approval by Parliament has been discussed extensively, and the last time Mr. Roxanne Dafiamekpo was trying to explain to us the rationale behind Parliament approving. But when I return from this break, I'll give you the opportunity to respond to that. There's also a suggestion by former President Mahama that we need a permanent commission instead of the ad hoc committees we put together every 4 years. And I'll be finding out whether that's the solution to all the problems we're talking about. There's also the request by MPs that rather there should be a pool of vehicles that will be fueled by government so they can use as and when necessary, and then they can leave it when they're exiting. We'll be finding answers to all of this shortly after this break. Do stay tuned in. We're still live on PM Express, and we've been discussing this car loans that has generated a whole lot of controversy among the public. And people think, why should government go ahead to pay 60% principal and interest accrued for MPs' loans to buy cars, and MPs themselves pay just 40% accrued? The people they represent themselves, they go get their own cars, they take care of all these needs themselves. Government doesn't take care of them. So why should the MP be a superhuman being? And Okujeto Ablakwa has also been hammering that point, the fact that MPs must go privately to look for loans to. Going forward, you want the Article 71 office holders, emoluments for them, an overhaul, a total overhaul. This will require constitutional amendment, right?
Yeah, we should be bold to do it. I mean, look at this Constitution Review Commission report. I mean, it's such a magnificent report. If you read it, it gives you such great insight about what are the hopes and aspirations of our people, the kind of democracy, the kind of constitutional order that the people want to see. And it will move from the consolidation of democracy to an era of growth and opportunity, forward-looking constitution. Let us go back and carry out, because look, there are lots of things that must change.
But it doesn't look like
we must start electing our MMDCs. We must abolish this practice of a hybrid where people go to parliament to catch the eye of the president to be made ministers. You either want to be a minister or you want to be a parliamentarian.
But that doesn't look like your colleagues. It doesn't look like your colleagues are in support of this decision or this proposal. Well, how do you intend to drive
We have not done any survey to know. I mean, a good number of them call me, and they are on all fours with me. They are excited about some of this advocacy. I think that, look, we should be fair to MPs. What is being done for ministers, for judges, for presidential staff, DCs, CEOs, should be the same arrangement for MPs, uniformity. But if there can be no uniformity, don't set MPs up for public bashing, for opprobrium, for attacks. Let me quickly respond to Dr. Draman's concerns about the 7th Parliament. You see, first of all, we must all admit that we let the country down, both sides.
Definitely.
We let the country down. That provision, I recall that the Honorable Muntaka saw it and raised concern that, look, First Lady, Second Lady, they are not Article 71 office holders. The other side just use their numbers railroaded.
But now there was no head count. Now
look at the embarrassment. And you see, it's brought in the last hour, it's rushed. They don't make copies for all members of parliament. It's just a few people in leadership.
But who is to blame if you don't ask for the report and you go ahead and approve?
It's time for Parliament to carry out an introspection and to say that, look, these practices must stop, because in the final analysis, it brings embarrassment upon the institution.
Definitely.
And all of us are caught flat-footed.
Let's see how this goes.
Should not continue. We must adopt a new paradigm that seeks to bring back public confidence in our democracy, beginning from Parliament.
And beginning
we must
from
change
Parliament.
a lot of the things we do.
Dr. Draman, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'm grateful that you were able to join us. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching, and I'm grateful, Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa, for coming here. Professor Jampo also joined us. I'm grateful to all of you, and enjoy the rest of our programs.